Hello and welcome to the Reading with Cari podcast. New episodes air every Wednesdays with special minisodes airing on Saturdays on any device you listen to podcasts. Click the link in the description to find the podcast now. Thank you and enjoy. Hello and welcome to Reading with Cari, a mindfulness podcast series that can be used as a sleep aid or to ease your anxiety and relieve your stress. I am your host, Cari Favole, and I am so thankful that you've decided to spend some time with me. Today's bonus episode is on winter solstice. It starts December 21st, and so I wanted to read an article about it because I don't really know too much about, the importance of it, so I thought it would be great to share it. I also wanted to do a small shout out that it is also Festivus for the rest of us, which started from Seinfeld, but people actually did start adapting it to their lives. They're just, they're not religious. They don't have a faith that they follow, so they have Festivus for the rest of us. So I think it's amazing that no matter what you celebrate, everyone is celebrating something in December, and I think that's beautiful, or almost everyone, I should say. So this article was posted by Deborah Byrd in Astronomy Essentials, and it is dated December 18th, 2020. Late dawn, early sunset, short day, long night. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, the December solstice marks the longest nights and shortest days of the year. Meanwhile, the Southern Hemisphere is having short nights and long days. The 2020 December solstice moment, when the sun reaches its southernmost point in the sky, will happen on Monday, December 21st, 2020 at 10:02 UTC, which is 4:02 a.m. Central Time. No matter where you live on Earth's globe, no matter what time the solstice happens for you, it's your signal to celebrate. The solstice is when the sun on our sky's dome reaches its farthest southward point for the year. At this solstice, the Northern Hemisphere has its shortest day and longest night of the year. To find the time in your location, you have to translate your time zone. Just remember, you're translating from 10:02 UTC on December 21st. For example, if you live in Perth, Australia, you need to add 8 hours to Universal Time to find out that the solstice happens at 18:02 or 6:02 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. So what is a solstice? The earliest people on Earth knew that the sun's path across the sky, the length of daylight, and the location of the sunrise and sunset all shifted in a regular way throughout the year. They built monuments such as Stonehenge in England, for example, at Machu Picchu in Peru, to follow the sun's yearly progress. But today we see the solstice differently. We can picture it from the vantage point of space. Today we know that the solstice is an astronomical event caused by Earth's tilt on its axis and its motion in orbit around the sun. Because Earth doesn't orbit upright, but is instead tilted on its axis by 23.5 degrees, Earth's northern and southern hemispheres trade places in receiving the sun's light and warmth most directly. The tilt of the Earth, not our distance from the sun, is what causes winter and summer. At the December solstice, the northern hemisphere is leaning most away from the sun for the year. At the December solstice, Earth is positioned in its orbit so that the sun stays below the North Pole horizon, as seen from the 23.5 degrees south of the equator at the imaginary line encircling the globe known as the Tropic of Capricorn. The sun shines directly overhead at noon. This is as far south as the sun ever gets. All locations south of the equator have day lengths greater than 12 hours at the December solstice. Meanwhile, all locations north of the equator have day lengths less than 12 hours. For us on the northern part of Earth, the shortest day comes at the solstice. After the winter solstice, the days get longer and the nights shorter. It's a seasonal shift that nearly everyone notices. Where should I look to see signs of the solstice in nature? Everywhere. For all of Earth's creatures, nothing is so fundamental as the length of daylight. After all, the sun is the ultimate source of all light and warmth on Earth. If you live in the northern hemisphere, you can notice the late dawns and early sunsets, and the low arc of the sun across the sky each day. You might notice how low the sun appears in the sky at local noon, and be sure to look at your noontime shadow. Around the time of the December solstice, it's your longest noontime shadow of the year. In the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. Dawn comes early and dusk comes late. The sun is high. It's your shortest noontime shadow of the year. Why doesn't the earliest sunset come on the shortest day? The December solstice marks the shortest day of the year in the northern hemisphere and longest day in the southern hemisphere. But the earliest sunset, or earliest sunrise if you're south of the equator, happens before the December solstice. Many people notice this and ask about it. The key to understanding the earliest sunset is not to focus on the time of sunset or sunrise. The key is to focus on what is called true solar noon, the time of day that the sun reaches the highest point in its journey across your sky. In early December, true solar noon comes nearly 10 minutes earlier by the clock than it does at the solstice around December 21st. With true noon coming later on the solstice, so will the sunrise and sunset times. It's this discrepancy between clock time and sun time that causes the northern hemisphere's earliest sunset and the southern hemisphere's earliest sunrise to precede the December solstice. The discrepancy occurs primarily because of the tilt of the Earth's axis. A secondary but another contributing factor to this discrepancy between clock noon and sun noon comes from the Earth's elliptical, oblong orbit around the sun. The Earth's orbit is not a perfect circle, and when we're closest to the sun, our world moves fastest in orbit. Our closest point to the sun, or perihelion, comes in early January. So we are moving fastest in orbit around now, slightly faster than our average speed of about 18.5 miles per second, or 30 kilometers per second. The discrepancy between sun time and clock time is greater around the December solstice than the June solstice because we're nearer the sun at this time of year. The precise date of the earliest sunset depends on your latitude. At mid-northern latitudes, it comes in early December each year. At northern temperate latitudes, farther north, such as in Canada and Alaska, the year's earliest sunset comes around mid-December. Close to the Arctic Circle, the earliest sunset and the December solstice occur on or near the same day. By the way, the latest sunrise doesn't come on the solstice either. From mid-northern latitudes, the latest sunrise comes in early January. The exact dates vary, but the sequence is always the same. Earliest sunset in early December, shortest day on the solstice, around December 22nd, latest sunrise in early January. And so the cycle continues. Now you'll notice this article was really about the science behind the solstice, and I chose that because I know that there are several beliefs out there, such as Wiccans, who believe in the solstice as a more spiritual holiday and religious holiday for them. But I didn't want to focus on just one. I'm very uneducated in that sort of aspect. So I wanted to have a broad scope of explaining what the solstice actually is. So if you are closer with nature and you really feel the beauty of the changing of the seasons and the solstice and feeling the Earth's axis, which I think is absolutely gorgeous, I hope you're not offended by me choosing a more scientific article to discuss. If you do have a story or an explanation of what you celebrate and you'd like me to read it, I would be more than happy to share it with my podcast. Just email readingwithcari@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I welcome you back anytime you may need to hear a comforting voice or a familiar bedtime story.